everybody, it's John Osborne here, also known as Trader John O. You can follow me on StockTwits and on Twitter. Let's go ahead and look at some of our FX markets. Let's start out with looking at a few Aussie pairs. First, the Aussie yen. You can see that we've got this weekly resistance line, this previous pivot. We went up and poked above it a little bit several weeks ago, a month and a half ago or so. And we're just moving up towards that area again. We broke above this trend line on the daily pennant with some strength, came back down and retested that line, and now we're trying to move back up again. We're still showing a little bit of bearishness on the 240, but we're growing some bullishness in the daily. We could see a little bit more strength in the weekly to make this a better trade, and maybe we should wait a little bit before we do anything else with this one and look for some more confirmed movement. If we look at the Aussie Kiwi, you can see we're still rocketing up here nicely. Look what's the movement that we're seeing in the weekly that we've been watching for a bit here. You can see we're moving towards this recent pivot, or that's a pivot from quite a while back actually, and you see some nice movement at 1.12697. If we expand out our daily, we can see another point where we can get to. If I can get my charts to work here a little bit better, but you can see there's nothing else in between where we are now and all the way up there, the 1.12697. So we could watch this thing move for quite a bit more. But let's see if we can get the bullishness or keep the bullishness going. We're starting to see a little bit more momentum coming in on the MACD. With the Aussie US dollar, you can see we went up, and after the FOMC news, went up and retested that 0.77402 line and got a little bit within it and then pulled back the last couple of days. So let's see if we can get some more strength. We're still seeing a little bit of sluggishness on the 240, but remember, we had bounced off this previous resistance trend line and came down for a little bit and moved back up towards it. So let's watch this weekly trend line to see if we can go higher. And of course, if we can break through the 77402, our first pivot after that will be 77772. Okay, and that's for right here. Heading over to the Loonie Swissy, you can see we've been watching this breakout on the daily of the pennant that we had. We went down and broke through the previous pivots. First this one, then this one. We sat there and congested a little bit, trying to break through the start of the pennant right here in the lower part. So we're still seeing some movement here that could go lower. If we can break down below that 74535, it would be potentially a nice drop all the way down to the bottom of this one here with the low of 70594. So let's see if we can do that. You can see here on the weekly, you can see how we're breaking through this support line here from this previous pivot. So we could be watching for a move back down longer term to 0.71698. Let's see what happens. We are looking pretty bearish on our weekly, but we're still not quite out of the bullishness on our monthly. Okay, let's look at the Loonie yen. You can see here we've been watching us crawl along this lower support line here, this trend line here, went down as low as this previous swing here. In fact, I'm going to adjust this to this pivot here and show that it was really a breakthrough, and then we matched along the bottom here for a little bit. So let's wait until we can at least break through 84.541 and maybe even at this low here of 84, looks like 182, before we can take this bearish further. Okay, but it is looking pretty bearish on the weekly. For the Euro Loonie, we're breaking above this 1.43897 nicely. We broke it here, and then we're now showing some pretty good strength. We're hesitating just a little bit as we approach that line. Let's see if we can wait till we get over that 1.43897 and see if we can get some movement going and head us back in that direction. We could be moving up towards this longer term trend line that we can see here on the monthly. We can see that on the weekly as well across here. I'm going to go ahead and draw that in here, and that could be an interesting target long term. Okay, it might take us over to here to get there, but around the 1.48 area, 1.49 area. In the euro pound, we've done the same thing. We broke out above this trend line here, went up and paused a little bit came back down and retested that trend line, but we're now making a movement back up again. Now we're fading a little bit as far as our strength. So to see if we can turn it around, maybe we could watch for a break above a trend line across the tops here and see if we can get higher than this point. That would get us up around the 0.87523, and that would give us some confidence that we are starting to move higher. But right now we are trending lower here, and we need to reverse that trend by putting in a higher high and a higher low before we could really move up on this one. Again, this was the failed or non-followed through attempted head and shoulders here, but we broke out above that pennant pattern that we have here. I'm ready to almost throw in the towel on the head and shoulders there, but we'll see. And with the pound US dollar, you can see we're moving up inside the pennant. We're getting close to reaching the top on this trend line here on the daily, and you can see on the weekly though that's not even halfway up, or about halfway up. So we could see some nice movement continuing up if we can get some strength behind us. Okay, we're showing some pretty good momentum on the weekly, daily, and the 4-hour. On the Kiwi Loonie, you can see that we've broken down below this previous pivot here after we exited out of the pennant here, consolidated for a little bit, tried to go up above, and then we came right back down again. So watch for movement down towards the 0.92001, and that will cause us the next bit of hesitation. If we can break through that, we could have a nice run a little bit further down. And finally, it's a good idea to keep an eye on the peso with all the activity that, relating to our current president. You can see how much we've been dropping lately, and there's some pretty good bearishness that's continuing along here. We're kind of free falling here as far as looking for a previous pivot, because there's no other pivots that we can get to unless we get way down here to this low. So we could see continued drop all the way down to about 18.14523, except for what's going on the weekly, and that we'll keep an eye on. That's at 18.85448, and we'll be watching for it to come down and see how it interacts with that support trend line. And that'll do it for today. I hope you enjoyed watching the charts, and we'll see you next time.